The silver lighter clicks open. Victoria Hartwell holds the $1.8 million check high above her head, making sure every customer in First Metropolitan Bank can see. The flame touches paper. Fire crawls across the numbers, consuming $1,800,000 in seconds. "This is what we do to fraud in my bank," she announces triumphantly. The ashes fall at Marcus Thompson's feet. His 8-year-old daughter Lily clutches his hand, tears streaming down her fever-flushed cheeks. Marcus doesn't flinch. He checks his watch. 2:47 p.m. 13 minutes until his quarterly board meeting. The meeting where he'll decide Victoria's fate. Because Marcus Thompson doesn't just have an account at this bank. He built it. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Tuesday, 2:34 p.m. First Metropolitan Bank, downtown Atlanta. Marcus Thompson pushed through the heavy glass doors with his daughter pressed against his chest. Lily's forehead burned hot through his old college hoodie. Her small arms wrapped around his neck, holding on with the desperate grip of a sick child who just wanted to go home. "Daddy, my head hurts," she whispered. "I know, baby girl. Just a few minutes. Daddy needs to pick up something important, then we're going straight to Dr. Patterson." Marcus had planned to send his assistant. That's what assistants were for. But Lily's daycare had called at 1:15, fever of 102, possible ear infection, please pick up immediately. His assistant was in New York. His ex-wife hadn't answered in 3 years. So Marcus left his corner office on the 47th floor of Thompson Tower, changed out of his $4,000 suit into the jeans and hoodie he kept for weekend fishing trips, and drove across town to get his daughter. The bank was on the way to the pediatrician. A 5-minute stop. In and out. That was the plan. Victoria Hartwell noticed him the moment he walked in. She stood near the investment services desk, reviewing account portfolios with her assistant manager, but her attention shifted immediately to the entrance. Black man, faded jeans, old gray hoodie, white sneakers that had seen better days, carrying a child. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. "Excuse me, Robert," she said to her assistant. "I need to handle something." She intercepted Marcus before he reached the main counter. "Sir." Her voice carried that particular tone, polite on the surface, dismissive underneath. "The ATM is outside if you need cash. This area is for account holders conducting substantial business." Marcus looked at her. Blonde hair pulled back tight. Designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Name tag reading, Victoria Hartwell, branch manager. The kind of woman who smiled at wealthy clients and frowned at everyone else. "I am an account holder," Marcus said calmly. "And I have a check to deposit." Victoria's eyebrow arched. "A check? I see. Well, you can use the ATM for deposits up to, it's over the ATM limit." "How much over?" Marcus shifted Lily slightly in his arms. The movement revealed the corner of an envelope in his jacket pocket. $1.8 million. Victoria laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A loud theatrical laugh that turned heads across the lobby. "I'm sorry, did you say 1.8 million? "I did." "From who exactly?" "The lottery." "Some Nigerian prince." Victoria's voice rose just enough for nearby customers to hear. She was performing now, and she wanted an audience. Lily lifted her head from Marcus's shoulder. "Daddy, why is the lady laughing?" "It's okay, sweetheart. Put your head down." Victoria's smile sharpened. "Daddy's just confused about how banks work, sweetie. We don't accept fantasy checks here." Marcus reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Lily's weight made the movement awkward, but he managed to pull out the envelope. Inside was a single check, cream-colored paper official letterhead, holographic security features that caught the fluorescent light. Thompson Holdings, LLC. Quarterly dividend payment. Pay to the order of Marcus D. Thompson. $1,800,000.00. He held it out to Victoria. She snatched it from his hand, examining it with exaggerated skepticism. Her eyes moved across the numbers, the signatures, the corporate seal. Her lips moved silently as she read. Thompson Holdings, she said loudly. Never heard of them. Probably because they don't exist. They exist. Sure they do. And I'm the Queen of England. Victoria waved the check like a piece of trash. Do you know what the penalty is for check fraud? Do you understand that I can have you arrested right now? Customers were staring. A woman near the window pulled out her phone. An elderly man in a Brooks Brothers suit shook his head in disapproval. A teenage girl started filming, her eyes bright with the promise of viral content. Marcus felt Lily trembling against his chest, whether from fever or fear he couldn't tell. Ms. Hartwell, he said quietly, I'd like to speak with you privately about this matter. Privately? Oh no. No, no, no. Victoria's voice climbed another octave. See, I've been in banking for 15 years. I know exactly what you people try to do. You walk in looking like you don't have two nickels to rub together, you flash some sophisticated-looking fake paper, and you hope the teller is too stupid or too scared to question it. You people, fraudsters, criminals, con artists. Victoria stepped close enough that Marcus could smell her expensive perfume. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I'd just deposit this ridiculous amount without verification? I expect verification. That's standard procedure. Standard procedure. Victoria laughed again. Let me tell you what standard procedure is going to look like today. She turned to address the growing crowd of customers. Her voice projected across the marble lobby like she was delivering a TED Talk on fraud prevention. Everyone, I want you to witness this. This is exactly why First Metropolitan has the highest security standards in the region. This man walked into my bank with a fake check for almost $2 million. $2 million. Can you imagine the audacity? The woman filming adjusted her angle. The viewer count on her live stream climbed 47, 89, 156. Daddy, Lily whispered, her voice cracking. I want to go home. Soon, baby. Very soon. Victoria wasn't finished. She held the check up for everyone to see, turning slowly so the cameras could capture it from every angle. Thompson Holdings LLC. Anyone here ever heard of Thompson Holdings? Anyone? She paused dramatically. That's because it's fiction. Made up. A fairy tale written by a criminal who thought he could walk in here and steal from honest, hardworking Americans. An elderly woman in a Chanel suit nodded vigorously. Absolutely disgraceful. Where is security? Security is on the way, Mrs. Patterson. Victoria's smile was radiant, now feeding off the crowd's validation. But first, I want everyone to see how we handle fraud at First Metropolitan. She reached into her jacket pocket and produced a silver lighter. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Protecting my bank, protecting my customers, protecting the integrity of the American financial system from people like you. The lighter clicked open. A small flame danced at its tip. You can't be serious. Marcus said, his voice still calm, but carrying an edge now. Oh, I'm very serious. Victoria brought the flame toward the corner of the check. Fake paper deserves to burn, just like the lies it represents. That check is legitimate, if you destroy it. If I destroy it, I'll be a hero. Watch and learn. The flame touched paper. Fire bloomed across the corner of the check, spreading quickly across the security watermarks, the official signatures, the corporate seal that Marcus himself had designed 12 years ago. No! Lily screamed, burying her face in her father's chest. Victoria held the burning check high above her head, letting the flames illuminate her triumph. Customers gasped. Phones captured every second. The live stream viewer count exploded. 312, 478, 650. This is what happens to fraud in my bank. Victoria announced, her voice echoing off the marble walls. This is what happens when criminals try to cheat the system. The fire consumed the numbers. $1.8 million turned to ash in seconds. Victoria dropped the burning remains at Marcus's feet. They scattered across the pristine marble floor, still smoking, filling the air with the acrid smell of destroyed paper and destroyed dreams. She ground her Italian leather heel into the ashes, twisting slowly while maintaining eye contact with Marcus. Problem solved. The elderly woman in Chanel applauded. Bravo, Victoria, bravo. That's exactly how you handle their kind. Burn first, ask questions later. A businessman near the window agreed. Should have done it the moment he walked in. Marcus looked down at the ashes, at the remnants of $1.8 million scattered across the floor like black snow. His quarterly dividend, his money, his property, destroyed. Daddy, why did she burn your paper? Lily's voice was barely a whisper broken by fever and fear. I don't know, baby girl, but it's going to be okay. Victoria stepped forward, emboldened by the crowd's approval. Okay. Nothing is okay for you. Do you understand what you've done? Attempted fraud is a federal crime. You're going to prison. Your daughter is going into the system. And I'm going to be interviewed on every news channel in Atlanta as the manager who stopped a $2 million con. She reached for Marcus's jacket pocket, where his wallet was visible. Let's see what other fake documents you're carrying. Stolen credit cards. Counterfeit ID. I bet this wallet isn't even yours. Marcus didn't resist as she pulled the leather wallet from his pocket. He was past that now. Past the point of trying to explain, past the point of defending himself against accusations that would soon seem laughably absurd. Victoria opened the wallet triumphantly, rifling through its contents. Platinum Amex Black Card. Sure, because unemployed fraudsters always carry exclusive credit cards that cost $15,000 annually. She held it up for the cameras. Obviously stolen. Everything about this man is a lie. The security guard finally arrived, slightly out of breath. Ma'am, what's the situation? Fraud attempt, major one. Victoria handed the guard Marcus's wallet. This individual tried to cash a fake check for nearly $2 million. I was forced to destroy the evidence before he could pass it to an accomplice. He's also carrying what appear to be stolen credit cards and possibly fraudulent identification. The guard looked at Marcus, at his worn clothing, and his sick daughter, and the ashes at his feet. He made his judgment in half a second. Sir, I'm going to need you to sit over there and wait for the police. Marcus nodded slowly. Of course. He carried Lily toward the leather chairs near the window, stepping carefully around the burned remnants of his check. The little girl's fever seemed worse now, her body radiating heat even through her thin dress. Is Daddy in trouble? She asked, her voice small and scared. No, sweetheart. Daddy's not in trouble. Then why did the lady burn your paper? Why is the man with the radio making us sit down? Because sometimes people make mistakes, Lily. Big mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes have consequences. Victoria followed them, unwilling to let her prize out of sight. She stood over Marcus's chair like a prosecutor at closing arguments. You seem awfully calm for someone who just got caught red-handed, she observed. Most criminals panic when their scheme falls apart. They cry, they beg, they make excuses. Marcus looked up at her, and for the first time something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not fear. Something closer to curiosity. Do they? Don't play games with me. I've seen every trick in the book. I'm sure you have. Victoria leaned closer, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, loud enough for the nearby cameras to capture. Here's what's going to happen. The police will arrive. They'll search you and find more evidence of your criminal enterprise. They'll take you into custody while I give my statement. Your daughter will be placed with Child Protective Services. And tomorrow morning, I'll be sitting across from Anderson Cooper explaining how I single-handedly stopped the biggest fraud attempt in this bank's history. Marcus checked his watch. 2:52 p.m. 8 minutes until his board meeting. Are you checking the time? Victoria laughed. Late for your next scam. Don't worry, you won't be going anywhere for a very long time. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. Then again. Then a third time. Turn that off, Victoria snapped. Your accomplices can wait. It's not an accomplice. I said turn it off. Marcus pulled out the phone, glancing at the screen. 3 urgent messages from his executive assistant board meeting in 8 minutes. Where are you? The quarterly review can't start without the chairman. He silenced the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. The live stream had exploded. Over 1,200 people were now watching live, with thousands more viewing replays. Comments scrolled faster than anyone could read. Most of them praised Victoria's decisive action. Some made jokes about the con artist getting what he deserved. A few questioned whether burning a customer's check was actually legal. Victoria noticed the viewer count and preened, visibly adjusting her hair and straightening her already perfect suit. Everyone watching, I want you to know that First Metropolitan Bank takes fraud prevention seriously. What you've witnessed today is exactly how every financial institution should handle criminal activity. Zero tolerance, swift action, complete destruction of fraudulent instruments. She pointed at the ashes still scattered across the marble floor. That pile of carbon is all that remains of a fake check, a fiction, a lie designed to steal from honest citizens. And I burned it. I burned it right in front of him, right in front of all of you, because that's what you do to lies. You destroy them. The elderly Chanel customer approached her expensive heels clicking against the marble. Mrs. Patterson, Victoria greeted her warmly. I hope this incident hasn't disrupted your morning too much. On the contrary, dear. This is the most excitement I've had in years. Mrs. Patterson looked down at Marcus with undisguised contempt. Trash like him thinks they can waltz into respectable establishments and take whatever they want. It's about time someone put them in their place. Couldn't agree more. You should be promoted for this. Regional manager at least. This bank needs more people with your conviction. Victoria's smile widened. Just doing my job, Mrs. Patterson. Protecting our customers from undesirable elements. Marcus listened to this exchange with the same unsettling calm he'd maintained throughout the ordeal. Lily had fallen into a feverish half-sleep against his chest, her breathing shallow but steady. Daddy, she murmured without opening her eyes. Yes, baby. Are we ever going home? Soon, I promise. The assistant manager, Robert, approached Victoria with a nervous expression. Ma'am, maybe we should verify some details before the police arrive, just to make sure our documentation is complete. What details? The situation is perfectly clear. It's just the check, the one you burned. I only got a brief look, but the security features seemed what? Robert hesitated. Professional. Very professional. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting the check might have been real? No. No, of course not. I'm just saying we should be thorough. For the incident report. The incident report will state exactly what happened. A criminal attempted to defraud this bank with a counterfeit check. The branch manager identified the fraud immediately and destroyed the evidence to prevent it from being passed to accomplices. Case closed. Robert nodded quickly and retreated. Marcus checked his watch again. 2:56 p.m., 4 minutes. Stop checking your watch, Victoria demanded. It's pathetic. Nobody's coming to save you. I'm not expecting anyone to save me. Then what are you expecting? Marcus looked at her, really looked at her for the first time, took in the ambition in her eyes, the hunger for approval, the absolute certainty that she was right and he was wrong. I'm expecting, he said slowly, that in about 4 minutes you're going to have a very different understanding of this situation. Victoria laughed, but something in his tone made the sound come out less confident than intended. Is that a threat? It's an observation. Well, observe this. Victoria pulled out her phone and began composing a tweet. At First Metropolitan Bank, we don't negotiate with fraudsters. We burn their fake checks. Zero tolerance. Fraud prevention. Justice served. She attached a photo of the ashes and hit post. The response was immediate. Likes, retweets, comments praising her courage and decisiveness. Within minutes, her post had been shared thousands of times. "Trending," Victoria announced triumphantly. "I'm actually trending. Do you see that the whole country is about to know my name?" Marcus said nothing. The wall clock read 2:58 p.m. 2 minutes. A young man near the coffee station held up his phone. "Hey, you're on TikTok. Someone made a video compilation already. It's got like 50,000 views." 50,000. Victoria's voice trembled with excitement. Already. The title is "Bank Manager Burns Fraudster's Fake Check." People are going crazy for it. Victoria turned to look at the cameras still filming at the phones, still recording at the crowd, still watching. Her moment of triumph captured forever, soon to be seen by millions. "Everyone remember this day," she announced, her voice ringing with newfound confidence. "Remember what happened here. Remember what happens when ordinary citizens stand up against crime. We don't cower. We don't negotiate. We act." She pointed at Marcus. "And when criminals try to cheat us, we burn their lies to ashes, and we let the whole world watch." The clock struck 2:59 p.m. 60 seconds. Marcus's phone buzzed one final time. He glanced at the message. "Starting board meeting without you. Emergency customer service review. Channel your dial-in when ready, Chairman." He looked at the ashes of his check. He looked at his daughter sleeping fitfully in his arms. He looked at Victoria Hartwell standing triumphantly over him, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. And for the first time since walking through those heavy glass doors, Marcus Thompson allowed himself to smile. "Ms. Hartwell," he said quietly, "I believe it's time for our proper introduction." Victoria's laugh cut through the lobby like broken glass. "Proper introduction. Oh, this should be good." She crossed her arms and addressed the crowd, her voice dripping with theatrical amusement. "Everyone, the con artist, wants to introduce himself. Please, by all means, tell us who you really are." "The Prince of Nigeria. A secret billionaire. Let me guess, you're actually the CEO of some massive corporation, and I've made a terrible mistake." Marcus shifted Lily gently in his arms. The little girl stirred, but didn't wake her fever-hot cheek pressed against his shoulder. "Something like that," he said. "Something like that." Victoria rolled her eyes dramatically for the cameras. "Of course it is. And I'm Beyoncé's personal assistant." The crowd laughed. Mrs. Patterson in her Chanel suit laughed loudest of all. Marcus reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Both security guards tensed immediately, hands moving toward their equipment. "Easy," the lead guard warned. "Move very slowly." "I'm just getting my tablet," Marcus said calmly. "Nothing dangerous. Unless you consider information dangerous." He pulled out a slim, expensive tablet, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Victoria noticed the brand but said nothing. Stolen, probably, like everything else this man carried. Marcus tapped the screen with practiced ease, navigating through applications with the familiarity of someone who used this device daily. The screen glowed bright in the lobby's fluorescent light. "What are you doing?" Victoria demanded. "Put that away. Whatever fake evidence you're trying to manufacture. I'm logging into First Metropolitan's board member portal." Victoria's smile flickered. Just slightly. Just enough to notice. "The what?" "The board member portal. Restricted access. Level 10 security clearance." Marcus continued tapping. "You've never seen it because you don't have authorization, but I do." "That's ridiculous. There's no way you could have access to—" The screen changed. Corporate blue filled the display. The First Metropolitan Bank logo appeared at the top, followed by text that made Victoria's throat tighten. "Corporate board access, authorized personnel, only security level, maximum." Marcus entered his credentials without looking at the keyboard. Muscle memory. The kind that comes from typing the same password hundreds of times. The screen refreshed, and Victoria Hartwell's world began to crumble. Welcome, Chairman Thompson. The profile loaded in crisp, undeniable corporate formatting. A professional headshot of Marcus, the same man standing before her, but wearing a $4,000 suit instead of a faded hoodie. The same calm eyes. The same patient expression. Marcus D. Thompson position. Founder and Chairman of the Board. Thompson Holdings, LLC. First Metropolitan Banking Group. Ownership. Stake. 68%. Board member. Since 2012. Security clearance. Level 10. Full executive access. Next scheduled meeting. Tuesday, 3:00 p.m. Agenda: Emergency Customer Service Review. Victoria's face went white. Not pale. White. Like all the blood had drained from her body in a single moment. That's... She swallowed hard. That's fake. You made that. Anyone can make a fake website. Marcus turned the tablet toward the crowd, toward the cameras, toward the thousands of people watching the live stream that had now exploded past 500 viewers. This is the official First Metropolitan Board Member portal. He said, his voice carrying across the silent lobby. The same portal that Ms. Hartwell's regional manager uses to file quarterly reports. The same portal that determines branch budgets, employee evaluations, and termination decisions. He swiped to another screen. Here's the security certificate. Digital signature verified by First Metropolitan's IT department. Timestamp today, 2:59 p.m. IP address this location. The assistant manager Robert approached slowly, his face ashen. "Oh my God," he whispered, staring at the screen. That's real. I've seen the regional manager use that same interface. That's actually the board portal." Victoria grabbed Robert's arm. "Shut up. It's obviously sophisticated fraud. He probably hacked—" "You can't hack the board portal," Robert said, his voice hollow. "It requires biometric verification, fingerprint scan. The only way to access it is if you're actually—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus finished it for him. "If you're actually a board member, which I am." He swiped to another screen. "In fact, I'm not just a board member. I founded this bank. Thompson Holdings LLC created First Metropolitan in 2012. We remain the majority shareholder with 68% ownership." The live stream comments exploded faster than anyone could read. "Wait, what? He owns the bank. This is the greatest plot twist I've ever seen. Oh my God, she burned her boss's check. Victoria is so fired." The viewer count climbed. 3,000, 3,500, 4,000. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Her hands trembled at her sides. Marcus swiped to yet another screen, the bank's internal employee directory. He navigated with obvious familiarity, the ease of someone who reviewed these files regularly. "Victoria Hartwell," he read aloud. "Branch manager, downtown Atlanta location. Employee ID 7421. Hired March 15, 2018. Annual salary $142,000 plus performance bonuses. Direct supervisor, regional manager David Chen. Emergency contact Thomas Hartwell's spouse." He looked up from the tablet directly into Victoria's panic-stricken eyes. "You've been working for me for 6 years and 7 months, Victoria. I sign off on your performance reviews. I approved your last promotion. I authorized your Christmas bonus." "That's impossible," Victoria whispered. "I would know. I would have seen you. We have photos of the board members in the break room. Photos from 2019. I've changed my appearance since then, lost some weight. Grew a beard for a while, then shaved it." Marcus's voice remained eerily calm. "But the real reason you didn't recognize me is because you never expected the owner of a bank to walk through the front door wearing jeans and a hoodie, carrying a sick child, looking like someone you'd dismiss, someone you'd humiliate, someone whose check you'd burn." He looked down at the ashes scattered across the marble floor. The remains of $1.8 million. His money. His property. That check you destroyed was my quarterly dividend payment, issued by this bank, to me, for being the majority owner of this institution. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who had applauded so enthusiastically minutes ago, began backing toward the exit. Her Chanel heels clicked rapidly against the marble. "I just remembered I have an appointment," she announced to no one in particular. "Lovely to see you, Victoria. Best of luck with everything." She disappeared through the glass doors without looking back. Other customers followed. The businessman who had suggested Victoria should run for mayor suddenly needed to check on his car. The teenagers who had been filming so eagerly lowered their phones, uncertain whether they were about to witness something they shouldn't see. But the live stream continued. The woman filming hadn't moved. Her hands shook, but she kept recording. The viewer count passed 5,000. Victoria's legs gave out. She collapsed into a nearby chair, her designer suit suddenly looking rumpled and cheap. "I didn't know," she breathed. "How could I have known you came in here looking like... Like what?" Marcus asked quietly. "Like someone who doesn't deserve respect. Like someone whose word isn't trustworthy. Like someone whose money is probably stolen. I was just doing my job. Fraud prevention is part of my responsibilities. I was protecting the bank from its owner." Victoria had no answer. Marcus walked slowly toward the scattered ashes, his sleeping daughter still cradled in his arms. He knelt carefully, his worn sneakers resting at the edge of the burned remains. $1.8 million, he said, picking up a fragment of charred paper. This was money that would have funded scholarships for underprivileged students, small business loans for minority entrepreneurs, financial literacy programs in communities that most banks ignore. He let the ash fragment fall back to the floor. "But you burned it. You destroyed it. Not because you had evidence of fraud. Not because your verification system raised red flags. But because you looked at me and decided in less than 30 seconds that I couldn't possibly be who I claimed to be." The lobby had gone completely silent. Even the security guards stood frozen, unsure of their role now that the criminal had revealed himself as their ultimate employer. Lily stirred in Marcus's arms. Her eyes fluttered open, still glazed with fever. "Daddy, why is everyone quiet?" "It's okay, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." "Is the mean lady going to say sorry?" Every eye in the room turned to Victoria. "Is she?" "Daddy teacher says, when we hurt someone we have to say sorry." Victoria's face crumbled. The tears she'd been fighting finally broke through. They streamed down her cheeks, ruining the perfect makeup she'd applied that morning. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. That's the problem." Marcus interrupted, his voice hardening for the first time. "You didn't know. And because you didn't know who I was, you felt entitled to treat me like garbage, to humiliate me in front of a crowd, to destroy my property, to traumatize my daughter." He stood slowly, the ashes of his check scattered at his feet like dark confetti. "What about the people you do this to who aren't the owner of the bank? The ones who walk in here needing help wearing their best clothes that still aren't good enough for you? The ones you dismiss, demean, and deny because they don't look like your idea of a real customer?" Victoria couldn't meet his eyes. She stared at the floor, tears dropping onto her designer blouse. "How many checks have you refused to process because the person holding them didn't look wealthy enough? How many customers have you directed to the ATM because they made you uncomfortable? How many people have walked out of this bank feeling exactly the way you tried to make me feel?" The live stream comments had shifted dramatically. "He's absolutely right. This is about more than just him. How many people has she done this to? Systemic racism exposed. This man is speaking facts." The viewer count approached 7,000 and showed no signs of slowing. Robert, the assistant manager, stepped forward hesitantly. "Mr. Thompson, sir, I'm so incredibly sorry about what happened. If I had known..." "Would you have stopped her?" Robert froze. What? If you had known who I was, would you have stopped her from burning my check, from stealing my wallet, from humiliating me in front of all these people? Robert's silence answered the question. That's what I thought. Marcus's voice carried a weight of disappointment heavier than anger. You knew what she was doing was wrong. You watched her discriminate against a customer based on his appearance. You saw her destroy private property without verification, and you said nothing, did nothing, because he was just some black guy in a hoodie and she was your boss. Robert's face flushed deep red. I should have spoken up. I know I should have. But Victoria is my direct supervisor and I need this job, and I thought maybe you really were a criminal, a fraud, because I looked the part. Robert had no response. Marcus turned back to Victoria, who remained slumped in her chair. Her perfect professional appearance, now a shambles of tears and ruined makeup. Stand up, Victoria. She didn't move. I said stand up. Slowly, shakily, Victoria rose to her feet. She wobbled on her expensive heels, steadying herself against the chair. Now look at the cameras. Victoria's eyes widened. Please, please, don't make me. Look at the cameras. She turned toward the phones still recording, toward the live stream that now showed over 8,000 viewers, toward the permanent digital record of her humiliation. These people watched you burn my check. They watched you mock me. They watched you call security on me for the crime of walking into a bank while black. They watched you perform your prejudice like it was entertainment. Marcus's voice grew stronger with each word. Now they're going to watch you face consequences. Real consequences. Not the slap on the wrist that people like you usually get. Not the quiet transfer to another branch. Not the sensitivity training that changes nothing. He opened another application on his tablet, what appeared to be an official HR document. I have the authority as chairman of the board to terminate any employee immediately for cause. Section 4.7 of our corporate bylaws gives me unilateral power to dismiss personnel who engage in discriminatory behavior, destruction of company property, or conduct that damages the bank's reputation. Victoria's knees buckled again, but this time she caught herself. Please, she begged, her voice cracking. I have a mortgage. My husband just lost his job. We have 2 kids in college. I can't lose this position. I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll take whatever training you want. You'll do all of those things, Marcus said. The question is whether you'll do them as an employee of this bank or as an unemployed former manager facing criminal charges. Criminal charges. Destruction of financial instruments is a federal crime under Section 141 of the U.S. Criminal Code. Mail fraud, destruction of banking documents. The penalties include fines up to $1 million and imprisonment up to 20 years. Victoria's face went from white to gray. Additionally, you filed a false police report when you told security I was aggressive and threatening. That's a separate crime. You stole my wallet and claimed its contents were fraudulent. That's theft and defamation. Marcus let the weight of these charges settle over the silent lobby. The video of this incident is already viral. It's been shared thousands of times. News outlets are picking it up. By tomorrow morning, your name and face will be associated with this event for the rest of your life. Victoria's tears flowed freely now, streaking her face with mascara. I made a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. But please, please don't destroy my life over one wrong decision. One wrong decision. Marcus's voice sharpened, the calm finally cracking to reveal the anger underneath. You didn't make one wrong decision, Victoria. You made dozens. You decided to profile me the moment I walked through the door. You decided to intercept me before I reached the counter. You decided to question my legitimacy in front of other customers. You decided to mock me, to laugh at me, to accuse me of crimes without evidence, to steal my property, to destroy my check, to file a false police report, to traumatize my daughter. He gestured toward Lily, still drowsy with fever in his arms. My 8-year-old daughter watched a strange woman burn her daddy's money and call him a criminal. She watched security guards treat her father like a suspect. She watched a crowd of adults applaud while her daddy was humiliated. Lily's eyes opened at the sound of her name. She looked around the lobby at the crying woman, at the silent crowd, at the ashes on the floor. "Daddy, why is the lady sad now?" Marcus's voice softened. "Because she's learning something important, baby girl." "What is she learning?" "That our choices have consequences. That how we treat people matters. That sometimes we have to face the things we've done wrong, even when it's hard." Lily considered this with the simple wisdom of childhood. "Is she going to jail?" Victoria made a small broken sound. "I don't know yet," Marcus said honestly. "That depends on what she chooses to do next." He turned back to Victoria, his expression unreadable. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you options. Real options with real consequences. And you're going to choose right now, in front of all these witnesses, which path you want your life to take." Victoria nodded frantically, desperate for any chance at redemption. Option 1. You resign immediately. You walk out of this bank today and never work in financial services again. I don't press charges. I don't pursue civil action. You disappear from this industry and we never speak of this again. "But I wouldn't be able to." "I'm not finished." Victoria fell silent. Option 2. You stay, but not as branch manager. You're demoted to entry-level teller, minimum wage, no benefits until you earn them back. You personally reimburse the bank for the cost of replacing the destroyed check and processing this incident. That's approximately $25,000, which will be deducted from your wages over time. Victoria's eyes widened. $25,000. Additionally, you complete 300 hours of community service at financial literacy centers in underserved communities, not sitting in an office, not teaching from a PowerPoint. Actually working with families who look like me, learning their stories, understanding their struggles, developing the empathy you clearly lack. Marcus paused, letting the terms sink in. You'll also attend mandatory sensitivity training every month for 2 years, not the useless corporate videos everyone sleeps through. Real training with real facilitators who will challenge your assumptions and force you to confront your biases. And if I complete all of that, then maybe in 2 or 3 years, you can work your way back to a supervisory position. Maybe you can rebuild your career and your reputation, but you'll do it by proving you've changed, not by being handed opportunities you haven't earned. Victoria's breathing had become rapid and shallow. The options hung in the air like a sentence from a judge. "What's the third option?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "There is no third option. Resign or stay and rebuild from nothing. Those are your choices." "But what about just transferring me to another branch, a quiet reassignment? Companies do that all the time when there's bad publicity. They move people around until things blow over." "No." The word was final. Absolute. "I'm not interested in moving the problem somewhere else. I'm interested in fixing it. Either you leave this industry entirely, or you stay and become part of the solution. There's no comfortable middle ground where you avoid consequences while pretending nothing happened." The live stream viewer count had passed 10,000. The comments section had become a flood of reactions, opinions, and debate. News alerts were popping up on phones across the country. "Bank owner confronts manager who burned his check, viral video." Victoria looked at the cameras, at the phone still recording, at the faces of customers and staff who had witnessed her fall from power. Then she looked at Marcus, at the man she'd dismissed as a criminal, the man whose check she'd burned with such pride and satisfaction, the man who now held her career and her future in his hands. "How long do I have to decide?" "You have 60 seconds. 60 seconds. That's not enough time to. You decided to burn my check in less than 60 seconds. You decided I was a criminal in less than 60 seconds. You decided my daughter should watch her father be humiliated in less than 60 seconds. I think 60 seconds is more than generous." Marcus raised his tablet, his finger hovering over what appeared to be an official termination form. "Choose Victoria. Resignation or redemption. 55 seconds." The digital clock on the wall ticked forward. 3:05 p.m. Victoria's eyes darted around the lobby, searching for an escape that didn't exist. The security guards stood motionless. The customers watched in silence. The cameras recorded every second. 50 seconds. I can't just decide my whole future in 45 seconds. Victoria's hands flew to her face, covering her eyes, as if she could block out the reality of her situation. 40 seconds. Please, I need more time. I need to think about my family, my obligations. You didn't think about my family when you burned my check. You didn't think about my daughter when you accused me of fraud. 35 seconds. Lily watched the countdown with wide eyes, not fully understanding, but sensing the weight of the moment. Daddy, is she choosing? Yes, baby, she's choosing. 30 seconds, Victoria. The manager's composure shattered completely. She dropped to her knees on the marble floor, right next to the ashes of the check she'd destroyed. I'll stay. I'll take the demotion. I'll do the community service. I'll do whatever you want. Just please, please don't take everything from me. Marcus lowered his tablet slowly. You're choosing option 2. Yes, I choose to stay and rebuild. You understand what that means. Minimum wage, no benefits, 25,000 in restitution, 300 hours of community service, 2 years of mandatory training, supervised probation with 0 tolerance for any further incidents. I understand. I accept. All of it. Marcus nodded once. Then let's begin. He turned to address the crowd, the cameras, the thousands of people watching online. Everyone who witnessed what happened here today, I want you to understand something. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't just about one burned check or one racist manager. This was about a system that allows people to be judged by their appearance instead of their character. A system that lets prejudice masquerade as professionalism. A system that protects the powerful while victimizing the vulnerable. He looked down at the ashes at Victoria's knees. Those ashes represent $1.8 million. But more importantly, they represent every customer who's ever walked into this bank and been treated as less than human because of how they looked. Every person who's been profiled, dismissed, and denied basic respect because they didn't fit someone's idea of a real customer. Marcus's voice grew stronger, more resonant. Starting today, that changes. Not just at this branch, at every first metropolitan location across the country. New policies, new training, new accountability measures. Because what happened here should never happen to anyone ever again. He extended his hand toward Victoria, still kneeling on the floor. Get up. Victoria took his hand and rose unsteadily to her feet. Your first assignment starts now. You're going to clean up these ashes, the ashes of the check you burned, and you're going to preserve them. They'll be displayed in this lobby as a permanent reminder of what prejudice costs, not just in money but in human dignity. Victoria nodded, tears still streaming down her face. Yes, sir. And Victoria? Yes. Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping to a level only she could hear. If you ever treat another customer the way you treated me today, I won't give you options. I'll give you consequences. Understood? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Understood. Marcus straightened and checked his watch. 3:08 p.m. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm late for a board meeting. We have a lot to discuss about customer service standards. He walked toward the exit, Lily still in his arms, the ashes of his check crunching softly beneath his worn white sneakers. The crowd parted silently before him, and behind him on her knees, collecting the burned remains of her crime, Victoria Hartwell began the long, painful process of becoming someone different, someone better, someone who would never again judge a person's worth by their appearance. The live stream continued recording, as Marcus Thompson, founder and chairman of First Metropolitan Bank, walked out the same glass doors he'd entered 34 minutes earlier. This time, everyone knew exactly who he was. The glass doors of First Metropolitan Bank closed behind Marcus with a soft whisper of air. Outside, the Atlanta afternoon pressed warm and humid against his skin, but he barely noticed. Lily's fever had spiked again, her small body radiating heat through his hoodie. "Daddy?" Her voice was thin, exhausted. "Can we go to the doctor now?" "Right now, baby girl. That's exactly where we're going." Marcus carried her toward his car, a modest Honda Accord, not the Mercedes in his executive garage. He'd chosen it deliberately this morning, wanting to blend in while rushing to pick up his sick daughter. The irony wasn't lost on him. His phone buzzed incessantly. 15 missed calls, 23 text messages. The board meeting had started 8 minutes ago without him, and his executive team was in various stages of panic. He ignored all of it. Lily came first. Lily always came first. At Dr. Patterson's office, the nurse took one look at Lily's flushed face and rushed them straight to an examination room. The pediatrician confirmed what Marcus had suspected, a severe ear infection requiring antibiotics and rest. "She should feel better within 24 hours, Dr. Patterson assured him, writing out prescriptions. "But keep her home from school for at least 3 days. Lots of fluids, lots of sleep." "Thank you." "Mr. Thompson, are you all right? You look distracted." Marcus managed a thin smile. "It's been a complicated afternoon." He didn't elaborate. He didn't mention the burned check, the public humiliation, the confrontation that was probably spreading across the internet like wildfire at this very moment. Some things were too fresh to discuss. By the time he got Lily home and settled into bed with her medicine and her favorite stuffed elephant, it was nearly 5 p.m. His phone had stopped buzzing, not because the calls had stopped, but because his battery had died from the constant notifications. He plugged it in and watched the screen come alive with alerts. 47 missed calls, 312 text messages, 89 email notifications, and a single voicemail from his executive assistant Margaret that he played first. "Marcus, I don't know where you are or what happened, but you need to call me immediately. The video is everywhere. CNN is calling. Fox News is calling. The New York Times wants a statement. The stock price jumped 6% in the last hour because of positive publicity, but the board is in emergency session trying to figure out how to respond. Please, please call me back." Marcus sat down heavily on his couch, suddenly exhausted. The video. Of course. He opened Twitter. The first trending hashtag was #BankBurnsCheck. The second was #MarcusThompson. The third was #JusticeServed. He clicked on the hashtag bearing his name and found himself staring at his own face, captured in that moment of calm revelation when he'd shown Victoria his board credentials. The clip had been viewed over 2 million times in less than 2 hours. The comments were overwhelming. "This man is my new hero. The way he stayed calm while she burned his money? I could never. She burned the owner's check, I'm screaming. This is what systemic racism looks like, and this is what accountability looks like. King behavior. Absolute king behavior." But not all the comments were supportive. He should have fired her on the spot. Too soft. Why give her a second chance? She wouldn't have given him one. The fact that he had to own the bank to get basic respect tells you everything. Imagine all the people she did this to who weren't billionaires. That last comment hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. He thought about Victoria's face when she realized her mistake. The terror, the desperation, the tears. But he also thought about the pride in her voice when she'd held his burning check above her head, the satisfaction when she'd ground the ashes under her heel, the theatrical cruelty she'd performed for an approving audience. How many times had she done this before? How many people had walked out of that bank feeling exactly the way she'd intended him to feel, worthless, humiliated, dismissed? His phone rang. Margaret. "Marcus, thank God. Where have you been? The whole world is looking for you. My daughter was sick. I took her to the doctor. Is she okay? She'll be fine. Ear infection. Good. That's good. Margaret paused. Marcus, I need to know what you want to do. The board is asking questions. The media is demanding statements. The video has over 5 million views now, and it's climbing every minute. 5 million? It's the top trending topic on every social media platform. People are calling you everything from a civil rights hero to a brilliant businessman to the greatest example of karma they've ever seen. Marcus closed his eyes. He hadn't wanted any of this. He'd just wanted to deposit a check and take his daughter to the doctor. What's the board saying? They're divided. Some want to release a formal statement distancing the company from Victoria's behavior. Some want to wait and see how public opinion settles. And some... Margaret hesitated. Some what? Some think you should have fired her. They're worried that keeping her on, even in a demoted position, sends the wrong message, that it looks like the company is protecting a racist employee. Marcus opened his eyes. And what do you think? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. I think you did something remarkable today. You had the power to destroy that woman completely, and you chose not to. You chose redemption over revenge. But I think the public might not see it that way. They want blood, Marcus. They want to see her suffer the way she made others suffer. That's not justice. That's vengeance. I know, but try explaining that to Twitter. Marcus stood up and walked to his window. The Atlanta skyline spread before him, buildings he'd helped finance, businesses he'd helped grow. He'd spent 20 years building something meaningful, something that created jobs and opportunities and wealth for thousands of people. And now, because of one branch manager's prejudice, all of that was overshadowed by a viral video. Schedule a press conference, he said finally. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., I'll make a statement. What are you going to say? The truth. All of it. He hung up and looked in on Lily one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, the medicine already bringing her fever down. Her stuffed elephant was clutched to her chest, and her face had lost some of its flushed redness. I'm sorry you had to see that today, baby girl, he whispered. But I promise you something good is going to come from it. He kissed her forehead gently and went to prepare for the most important press conference of his life. The next morning, Marcus stood at a podium in First Metropolitan's corporate headquarters, facing a room packed with reporters' cameras and microphones. The video of yesterday's incident played on screens behind him, paused at the moment Victoria held his burning check above her head. Good morning, Marcus began, his voice steady. Thank you all for coming. I know you have questions about what happened yesterday at our downtown Atlanta branch. I'm here to answer them honestly and completely. He paused, looking directly into the cameras. But first, I want to address something that's been bothering me since this whole thing started. The attention, the viral fame, the millions of views, none of that should be about me. It should be about every person who's ever walked into a bank, a store, a restaurant, or any other business and been treated as less than human because of how they looked. The room was silent. Pens stopped moving. Cameras focused tighter on his face. I got justice yesterday because I happened to own the bank. I got respect because I could prove my wealth with corporate documents and tablet screens. But what about the people who can't prove anything? What about the single mother trying to cash her paycheck so she can buy groceries for her kids? What about the elderly man depositing his Social Security check so he can pay his rent? What about the teenager opening their first bank account and learning in that moment that the world sees them as a threat rather than a customer? Marcus let the questions hang in the air. Victoria Hartwell burned my check because she looked at me and decided I couldn't possibly be legitimate. She saw a black man in casual clothes carrying a sick child, and she immediately categorized me as a criminal. Not because of anything I said or did, because of who I appeared to be. He clicked a remote, and the screen behind him changed to show statistics. Last year, First Metropolitan Bank received over 200 complaints of discriminatory treatment. 200 families who felt they were treated unfairly because of their race, their age, their disability status, or their economic appearance. And those are just the ones who complained. Studies show that for every customer who files a formal complaint, dozens more simply walk away and never come back. The reporters began writing furiously. Yesterday, I gave Victoria Hartwell a choice. She could resign and leave the banking industry forever, or she could stay and begin the long, difficult process of becoming a better person. She chose to stay. A reporter's hand shot up. Mr. Thompson, do you think that was the right decision? Many people believe she should have been fired immediately. I understand that perspective, Marcus replied calmly. And I spent a lot of time last night thinking about it. But here's what I kept coming back to. If we fire everyone who displays bias and prejudice, we don't eliminate bias and prejudice. We just move it somewhere else. We hide it. We make it less visible, but no less harmful. He stepped out from behind the podium, moving closer to the audience. Victoria Hartwell is not a monster. She's a product of a system that taught her to judge people by their appearance. A system that rewarded her for being vigilant against the wrong kind of customer. A system that I, as the leader of this company, allowed to exist. So you're taking responsibility for her behavior. I'm taking responsibility for the culture that enabled her behavior. There's a difference, but both matter. Another hand went up. What specific changes will you be implementing? Starting today, First Metropolitan Bank is instituting what we're calling the Dignity First Initiative. Every customer, regardless of how they look or how much money they have, will be treated with respect from the moment they walk through our doors. We're implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all employees, not just managers. We're installing cameras that will record every customer interaction with random reviews by an independent civil rights organization. We're creating anonymous feedback systems so customers can report discrimination without fear of retaliation. Marcus returned to the podium and clicked to the next slide. We're also establishing a community fund starting with the $1.8 million that Victoria burned yesterday. That money will be replaced from corporate reserves and dedicated entirely to financial literacy programs in underserved communities. We're partnering with local organizations to provide free banking education, credit counseling, and small business support to families who have historically been excluded from the financial system. The reporters murmured among themselves. This was bigger than anyone had expected. Finally, Marcus continued. I'm personally committing to quarterly visits to random branch locations, unannounced, dressed exactly like I was dressed yesterday. Not to catch employees doing wrong, but to experience what our customers experience. To understand what it feels like to walk into a First Metropolitan Bank without the protection of my title and my wealth. A reporter near the front raised her hand. Mr. Thompson, we've learned that Victoria Hartwell is scheduled to begin her community service this Saturday. Will you be there? Yes, I'll be at the Southside Financial Literacy Center when she arrives. Not to supervise or intimidate her, but to participate. I believe that if I'm asking my employees to learn about the communities they serve, I should be learning alongside them. One more question, Mr. Thompson. Your daughter was present during yesterday's incident. How is she doing, and how do you explain to a child what happened? Marcus's expression softened for the first time since the press conference began. Lily is doing better. Her fever broke last night, and she was well enough this morning to ask me why people were talking about us on TV. He smiled slightly. I told her the truth that sometimes people make assumptions about others based on how they look, and that those assumptions can lead to hurtful behavior. She asked me if the bank lady was going to learn to be nicer. I told her that was exactly what we were going to help her do. He paused, emotion flickering across his face. My daughter watched a stranger burn her father's money and call him a criminal. She watched adults applaud while her daddy was humiliated. That's something no child should ever see. But she also watched her father respond with grace instead of rage, with education instead of punishment, I hope that's the lesson she carries with her, that power isn't about destruction. It's about the choices we make when we have every reason to destroy. The room was silent for a long moment. Thank you all for coming. I'll take a few more questions. The press conference continued for another 45 minutes. Marcus answered everything honestly, directly, without deflection or corporate doublespeak. By the time it was over, the narrative had shifted. He wasn't just the man who'd been wronged. He was the man who'd responded with wisdom. 3 days later, Marcus Thompson walked into the Southside Financial Literacy Center wearing jeans, a casual button-down shirt, and the same worn white sneakers he'd been wearing when Victoria burned his check. The sneakers had become something of a symbol, now appearing in memes and merchandise across the internet. He'd been offered a sponsorship deal by Nike. He'd declined. Mrs. Dorothy Johnson, the center's 71-year-old director, met him at the door. "Mr. Thompson, it's an honor to have you here." "Please call me Marcus. And the honor is mine, Mrs. Johnson. I've read about the work you've done in this community for the past 30 years. You've helped more families build financial stability than most banks ever will." Mrs. Johnson's eyes crinkled with warmth. "Flattery will get you everywhere, young man. Come inside. Your employee is already here." Marcus followed her into the center, a modest building with fluorescent lights and worn furniture, but walls covered with success stories, photos of families who'd bought their first homes, started their first businesses, sent their first children to college, all with guidance from this organization. Victoria Hartwell sat in a plastic chair near the front desk, looking nothing like the polished branch manager who'd burned a millionaire's check 3 days ago. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore no makeup. Her clothes were plain and professional, but carried none of the designer labels she'd been sporting during the incident. She looked up when Marcus entered, and her face went through a cascade of emotions: fear, shame, guilt, and something that might have been hope. "Mr. Thompson," she said, standing quickly, "I didn't expect you to actually come. I said I would be here. I keep my word." "I know. I just—" Victoria's voice trailed off. "I wouldn't have blamed you if you'd changed your mind." Marcus studied her for a moment. The woman before him bore little resemblance to the triumphant branch manager who'd held his burning check above her head. That Victoria had been armored in certainty, wrapped in the conviction that she was right and he was wrong. This Victoria was stripped bare, vulnerable, uncertain. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Victoria blinked clearly, not expecting the question. "I've been better. My kids saw the video. My husband won't look at me. My parents called to tell me how disappointed they were." She swallowed hard. "I've received over 1,000 death threats. People have sent photos of my house to me, my children's schools. Someone threw a rock through our living room window yesterday." Marcus frowned. "I didn't know about that. I'm sorry." "You're sorry. I'm the one who—" "Being held accountable for your actions doesn't mean you deserve to have your family terrorized. I'll have my security team reach out. We'll make sure you and your children are safe." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you do that after what I did to you?" "Because protecting people is what we're supposed to do. All people. Even people who've made terrible mistakes." Mrs. Johnson had been watching this exchange silently. Now she cleared her throat. "If you two are finished with your moment, we have work to do. The Rodriguez family will be here in 20 minutes. They're trying to understand why their small business loan was denied after 10 years of perfect credit history. Victoria, you're going to sit with them and explain exactly how the banking system works and doesn't work for families like theirs." Victoria wiped her eyes. "Yes, ma'am." "And Marcus, you're going to observe. Watch how our clients are treated when there's no viral video, no media attention, no billionaire revealing himself at the last moment. Watch what normal looks like for people who don't own the bank." "Yes, ma'am," Marcus echoed. The Rodriguez family arrived precisely on time. Carlos and Maria, both in their mid-40s, dressed in their Sunday best, despite it being a Saturday. Their daughter Elena, a college student, accompanied them, serving as translator for her parents' limited English. Mrs. Johnson made introductions carefully, not mentioning who Marcus was. To the Rodriguez family, he was simply another volunteer helping out at the center. Victoria sat down across from them at a battered conference table. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the folder containing their loan rejection letter. "Thank you for coming in today." She began, her voice steadier than her hands. "I understand you were denied a loan to expand your restaurant. Can you tell me about your business?" Carlos spoke in rapid Spanish, his daughter translating. "My father says they've run the restaurant for 15 years, never missed a payment on anything, never been late on taxes. They want to expand into the space next door because they have more customers than they can serve. They have all the paperwork, all the documentation, but the bank said no." Victoria studied the rejection letter. Her face paled. "The reason listed here is insufficient credit history." "But that's wrong," Elena said, frustration creeping into her voice. "They have 15 years of credit history. They showed us everything." "I know it's wrong, and I know why it happened." Carlos and Maria looked at Victoria, waiting. "The loan officer looked at your address," Victoria continued slowly. "He saw what neighborhood you're from. He saw your names, and he decided without looking at any of your actual financial documents that you were too risky." Elena translated. Carlos's face tightened with anger. Maria's eyes filled with tears. "That's illegal," Elena said. "That's discrimination." "Yes, it is." Victoria's voice carried a weight that hadn't been there at the beginning of the conversation. "And I know it's illegal because I've done the same thing. Maybe not exactly, but I've looked at customers and decided based on how they looked or where they lived that they weren't worth my time, that they probably weren't legitimate, that they were risks instead of opportunities." The room went quiet. "I'm not telling you this to excuse what happened to your family," Victoria continued. "I'm telling you because you deserve to know that the problem isn't you. The problem is people like me, people who are supposed to serve you but instead decide you're not worth serving." She turned to Marcus, who had been sitting silently in the corner. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'd like you to meet someone. This is Marcus Thompson. He owns several banks, including First Metropolitan, where your loan was denied." Carlos and Maria's eyes went wide. Elena gasped. "Mr. Thompson, is there anything you can do to help my parents?" Marcus leaned forward. "I've already looked at your file. Your loan will be approved by Monday. Not as a favor, but because you deserve it. Your credit history is excellent. Your business plan is solid. The only reason you were denied is because someone made the same assumptions about you that were made about me." Elena translated quickly. Maria burst into tears. Carlos stood up and crossed to Marcus, gripping his hand with both of his. "Gracias," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Gracias, señor. Thank your family's hard work, not me. I'm just fixing a mistake that never should have happened." Victoria watched the exchange, and something shifted in her expression. The abstract concepts of prejudice and discrimination suddenly had faces, had names, had a family restaurant that served the community and almost lost its chance to grow because someone looked at an address and made a judgment. "I'm sorry," she said to the Rodriguez family. "On behalf of everyone in banking who has ever treated you as less than you are, I'm so sorry." Carlos looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "My mother used to say that the measure of a person is not the mistakes they make." Elena translated, "But what they do after the mistake is made. She asks if you mean what you say." "I do," Victoria whispered. "I swear I do." Carlos extended his hand to her. Victoria took it, and for the first time since she'd burned that check, she felt something other than shame. She felt the first tiny seed of redemption taking root. The day continued with more families, more stories, more evidence of a system that judged people by their appearance instead of their character. Victoria listened to each one with growing understanding. Marcus observed occasionally, offering resources or connections, but mostly just bearing witness. By the end of the day, Victoria had helped 6 families navigate various financial challenges. She'd explained loan processes, credit scores, and banking rights. She'd apologized repeatedly for a system she'd benefited from without questioning. And she'd begun to understand what Marcus had meant when he'd offered her redemption instead of destruction. As the center closed for the evening, Victoria approached Marcus one final time. "I still don't understand why you gave me a second chance." Marcus looked at her steadily. "Because I have a daughter, and I want her to grow up in a world where people can change, where mistakes, even terrible mistakes, don't have to define your entire life." "Do you think I can change, really change?" "I think you already have. The question is whether you'll keep changing, or whether this is just temporary guilt that fades once the cameras go away." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "I keep thinking about your daughter's face," she finally said. "The way she looked at me when I burned your check. The fear in her eyes. I did that to a child. To your child. And I was proud of it." "That's the memory that will drive you," Marcus replied. "The shame of who you were. Hold on to it. Let it remind you every single day of who you never want to be again." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Same time next week, Victoria. There are more families who need help, and you have a lot to learn." Victoria nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Yes, sir. I'll be here." Marcus walked out into the Atlanta evening where his driver waited to take him home to his daughter. Behind him, in the fluorescent light of the Southside Financial Literacy Center, Victoria Hartwell began the long journey toward becoming someone new, someone worthy of the second chance she'd been given. 3 weeks passed. 21 days of headlines, interviews, and a story that refused to fade from public consciousness. The video of Victoria burning Marcus's check had crossed 50 million views. It had been analyzed by sociologists, debated by politicians, and referenced in corporate training seminars from New York to Los Angeles. First Metropolitan Bank's stock had risen 18%, driven by positive publicity and Marcus's widely praised response. But for Victoria Hartwell, those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. She arrived at the Southside Financial Literacy Center every Saturday at 8 a.m. sharp, an hour before it opened. Mrs. Johnson had given her keys after the second week, a small gesture of trust that Victoria hadn't expected and didn't feel she deserved. On this particular Saturday morning, she found Marcus already there, sitting at the same battered conference table where they'd helped the Rodriguez family. A cup of coffee steamed beside him, and he was reading through a stack of client files. "You're early," Victoria said, surprised. "Couldn't sleep?" Marcus didn't look up from the files. "Lily had a nightmare about the bank. Woke up crying, asking if the mean lady was going to burn Daddy's money again." Victoria felt the words like a physical blow. She set down her bag and sat across from him. "I'm sorry. I know those words don't mean much anymore, but I'm sorry." She's seeing a therapist now, child psychologist specializing in trauma. Marcus finally looked up, and Victoria saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "She's 8 years old, and she needs therapy because of what you did." "I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say. There's only what you do." Marcus pushed a file across the table. "Mrs. Patterson called yesterday, the woman in the Chanel suit who applauded when you burned my check." Victoria stiffened. "I remember her. She's been a First Metropolitan client for 43 years, substantial accounts, major investments. She called to close everything." "Because of me?" "Because of the video. She's embarrassed. Her face is all over the internet clapping while you humiliated me. Her country club friends have been making comments. Her pastor mentioned the incident in a sermon about the dangers of prejudice." Marcus's voice carried no satisfaction. "She's lost friends' social standing, and now she blames the bank." I don't know if that's justice or just more pain." "It's consequences. They don't always feel like justice." Marcus stood up and walked to the window. "I didn't want any of this, Victoria. I just wanted to deposit a check and take my daughter to the doctor. Now my face is everywhere. My daughter needs therapy, and I spend more time managing the fallout than running my company." Victoria didn't know how to respond. She'd been so focused on her own suffering, the death threats, the social media attacks, the loss of her position and status, that she hadn't truly considered what this had cost him. "If you could go back," she asked quietly, "would you do anything differently?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. "I would have used the drive-through ATM instead of walking inside." Despite everything, Victoria almost laughed. Almost. "But since I can't go back?" Marcus continued, turning to face her. "I have to make sure this counts for something. All the pain, all the publicity, all the upheaval, it has to mean something. Otherwise, it's just trauma with no purpose." "Is that why you're here, to make sure it means something?" "I'm here because Mrs. Johnson called me at 6 a.m. and said we have a problem." Victoria's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? The kind that walks through the door in about 20 minutes. A woman named Denise Carter, single mother of 3, works 2 jobs, has been trying to open a basic checking account at various banks for the past year. Every single one has rejected her. Rejected her. For a checking account. Why? Because 8 years ago she was convicted of writing bad checks. She served her time, paid her restitution, and rebuilt her life. But her name is in a database called Check Systems. It's a blacklist that banks use to identify risky customers. Once you're on it, you're essentially locked out of the traditional banking system. Victoria frowned. "I know about Check Systems. It's a legitimate fraud prevention tool. It's also a tool that keeps people trapped in poverty. Denise can't cash her paychecks without paying outrageous fees at check cashing stores. She can't set up automatic payments for her bills. She can't establish the kind of financial stability that might help her build a better life for her kids. What do you want me to do about it?" Marcus sat back down across from her. "I want you to listen to her story. Really listen. And then I want you to tell me whether the system we've built is actually protecting people or just punishing them for mistakes they made years ago." Victoria opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the front door opened. A woman walked in, early 40s, wearing scrubs from what looked like a nursing home job. She carried herself with the wary posture of someone who expected rejection. "Mrs. Carter." Mrs. Johnson appeared from the back office. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Denise Carter sat down at the conference table, her eyes moving between Victoria Marcus and Mrs. Johnson with visible suspicion. "I know who you are," she said to Victoria. "You're the check-burning lady from the video." Victoria's face flushed. "Yes, that's me." "And you're the man she did it to." Denise looked at Marcus. "I've seen your face all over the news. I'm Marcus Thompson, and I'm here to listen." Denise laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Listen to what?" "My sad story." "You want me to make you feel better about giving that woman a second chance, while people like me don't even get a first one?" Marcus didn't flinch. "I want you to tell me what's happened to you, all of it, and then I want to see if there's anything we can do to help." "Help?" Denise repeated the word like it was a foreign language. "You know how many times I've heard that word? From social workers, from church volunteers, from do-gooders who show up for a photo op and then disappear. Everyone wants to help until they actually have to do something." "What do you need?" Victoria asked. Denise turned to her with undisguised contempt. "You don't get to ask me that. You burned a millionaire's check because you thought he was trash. What do you think you would have done to someone like me?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. "I would have called security," Victoria admitted quietly. "I would have assumed you were trying to scam us. I would have treated you exactly the way I treated him, maybe worse because you wouldn't have had a billion-dollar company to prove me wrong." Denise stared at her for a long moment. "At least you're honest about it." "I'm trying to be. It's the only thing I have left." Something shifted in Denise's expression. Not forgiveness, not even close, but maybe a slight softening of the contempt. 8 years ago, I was married to a man who controlled all our money. I didn't know what bills we had, what debts we owed, anything. He gave me a checkbook and told me to buy groceries. I bought groceries. I didn't know the account was empty. I didn't know he'd drained everything for drugs and gambling. She took a breath, steadying herself. I wrote $347 worth of bad checks at 3 different stores. They prosecuted me for fraud. My husband testified that I knew exactly what I was doing, that I was the one with the addiction. The judge believed him. I got 18 months. Victoria felt sick. And your husband? He got custody of our kids while I was locked up. Then he disappeared with them for 2 years. By the time I found them again, my oldest daughter barely remembered me. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Johnson said gently. Where are your children now? With me, finally. Their father overdosed 3 years ago. I got them back, got clean. Not that I was ever dirty, but tell that to a judge who sees a black woman with a fraud conviction and started rebuilding. Denise's voice hardened. But here's the thing about rebuilding. The system doesn't let you. I can't get a bank account because of check systems. I can't rent an apartment without a bank account proving income. I can't get a job at most companies because they run background checks and see fraud conviction. I'm trapped in a box that keeps getting smaller, and everyone keeps telling me to work hard and make better choices, while they're the ones making sure I have no choices left. Marcus had been listening silently, but now he spoke. What would it take to get you out of that box? A bank account would be a start. Just a basic checking account so I can cash my paychecks without losing 20% to fees. So I can pay my bills online like a normal person. So my kids can see their mother doing regular things instead of standing in line at the check cashing place on the bad side of town. Consider it done. Denise blinked. What? First Metropolitan will open an account for you, today. I'm authorizing it personally. You can do that? Just override the system. I can do whatever I want. I own the bank. Marcus said it without arrogance, just as a simple statement of fact. But I'm not just going to make an exception for you. I'm going to change the policy entirely. Victoria looked at him. What do you mean? Check systems was designed to protect banks from fraud, but it's being used to punish people forever for mistakes they made years ago, often in circumstances beyond their control. Marcus pulled out his tablet and began typing. I'm sending an email right now to our policy team. Starting Monday, First Metropolitan will offer second chance accounts to anyone on the check system's blacklist who can demonstrate they've addressed the underlying issues. No minimum balance, no predatory fees, just a basic pathway back into the financial system. Denise's eyes filled with tears. You're serious? I'm completely serious, and I want you to help design the program. You understand what people in your situation need better than any banker ever could. We'll pay you as a consultant. I don't understand. Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me. Marcus looked at Victoria, then back at Denise. Because 3 weeks ago, I learned what it feels like to be judged by your appearance instead of your actions. For about 30 minutes, I experienced what you've experienced for 8 years. The difference is, I had the power to prove everyone wrong. You didn't. He leaned forward. I can't undo what happened to you. I can't give you back those 18 months or the years you lost with your children. But I can make sure that what happened to me, being assumed guilty until proven innocent, becomes harder to do to anyone else. Denise wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You know people are going to fight this, right? The other banks, the credit industry, they make money keeping people like me locked out. Fees, payday loans, all of it. You're threatening their business model. Let them fight. I've been building businesses for 20 years. I know how to win a fight. Victoria had been watching this exchange in silence, feeling something shift inside her. For 3 weeks, she'd been focused on her own punishment, her own redemption, her own journey from villain to something better. But this was bigger than her. This was about systems, about power, about who got second chances and who didn't. I want to help, she heard herself say. Everyone turned to look at her. I know the banking industry from the inside. I know how decisions get made, how policies get implemented, how people get overlooked. I know because I was part of it. Victoria's voice grew stronger. If you're going to change the system, you need someone who understands how the system works and how it fails. Denise studied her with those wary eyes. You burned that man's check because he was black. Why should I trust you to help people like me? You shouldn't. I haven't earned your trust, but I'm going to keep showing up here every Saturday. I'm going to keep listening to stories like yours, and maybe after enough time, you'll see that I'm not just here to make myself feel better. I'm here because I finally understand what I was part of, and I want to tear it down. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Denise nodded slowly. Talk is cheap, but I'll be watching. That's all I ask. Marcus looked between the two women, one who had been destroyed by the system, one who had been part of destroying others, and saw something unexpected. Possibility. Mrs. Johnson, he said, I think we have the beginning of something here. Can you put together a working group, Denise, Victoria, yourself, and whoever else you think should be involved? I want a comprehensive proposal for the Second Chance banking program within 60 days. I can do that, Mrs. Johnson replied. But I want to make something clear, Mr. Thompson. This isn't charity work. This is building power for communities that have been powerless. If you're not committed to that really committed, then don't bother starting. I'm committed. We'll see. Mrs. Johnson's voice carried decades of experience with promises from wealthy donors. We'll see. Over the following weeks, the working group met every Wednesday evening at the community center. Victoria arrived straight from her new job as a teller minimum wage. No benefits exactly as Marcus had specified, still wearing her modest work clothes that were nothing like the designer suits she used to favor. Denise arrived after her second shift, exhausted but determined. She brought stacks of notes from her own experience interviews with other people locked out of the banking system, and an anger that had been sharpened into focus over 8 years of fighting a system designed to keep her down. Mrs. Johnson presided over the meetings with the firm hand of someone who had been organizing communities since before any of them were born. She didn't tolerate excuses, empty promises, or what she called poverty tourism, well-meaning rich people who wanted to help without actually changing anything. The question, she said during their fourth meeting, is whether this program is going to be real or just good publicity for Mr. Thompson's bank. It's going to be real, Victoria said firmly. And how do you know that you've been here a month? Marcus has been here a few Saturdays. Meanwhile, I've been watching banks promise to help this community for 30 years, while their lending practices kept getting worse. Marcus arrived late that evening, still in his business attire, having come straight from a board meeting. He took a seat at the table and listened to Mrs. Johnson's challenge. You're right to be skeptical, he said when she finished. I would be too. So let me tell you what I've done in the past month that should matter more than words. He pulled out a folder and laid several documents on the table. First, I've personally guaranteed the initial funding for the Second Chance program. $10 million from my own accounts, not corporate money. If the program fails, I lose that money. That's my skin in the game. Denise picked up the document, scanning it with disbelief. You put up $10 million of your own money. Second, Marcus continued, I've resigned from 3 corporate boards that I believe perpetuate discriminatory lending practices. The announcement goes public tomorrow. It's going to cost me relationships, influence, and approximately $4 million in annual board fees. Mrs. Johnson's expression shifted slightly. Not impressed, she was too experienced for that, but attentive. Third, and this is the hardest one. Marcus paused. I've accepted an invitation to testify before Congress next month about discrimination in banking. I'm going to share everything I know about how the industry excludes people, how algorithms perpetuate bias, and how even well-meaning banks, including my own, have failed communities of color. Victoria stared at him. You're going to testify against your own industry. I'm going to tell the truth. If that's testifying against my industry, then maybe my industry needs to change. Mrs. Johnson was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "All right, Mr. Thompson. You've got my attention. But attention isn't trust. Trust gets built over years, not weeks." "I understand. I'm not going anywhere." The meeting continued for another 2 hours, diving deep into policy details, implementation challenges, and the 1,000 small decisions that would determine whether this program actually helped people or just made everyone feel good about trying. At the end, as everyone gathered their things to leave, Denise approached Victoria. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Victoria nodded, following her outside into the warm Atlanta evening. "I've been thinking about what you said," Denise began, "about wanting to tear down the system you were part of. I meant it. I believe you meant it in the moment. But here's what I need to know." Denise fixed her with a steady gaze. "When this stops being national news, when the cameras go away, when helping people like me isn't good publicity anymore, will you still be here?" Victoria didn't answer immediately. She could have offered easy reassurances, promises that cost nothing to make and everything to keep. But Denise deserved better than that. "I don't know," she admitted. "A month ago, I was a branch manager who thought I was one of the good ones. I wasn't racist, not the way I understood racism. I was just doing my job, protecting my bank, maintaining standards. I didn't see what I was really doing until I did it to someone who could prove me wrong." She took a breath. "I want to say I'll be here forever, but the truth is, I'm still figuring out who I am after what I did. Every day I wake up and see my face on some new article about racism in banking. Every day I get messages from strangers calling me a monster. Every day I look in the mirror and wonder if they're right." Denise listened without interrupting. "So here's what I can promise," Victoria continued. "I'll be here next Saturday, and the Saturday after that. And I'll keep showing up until the day I don't. And if that day ever comes, you have every right to say you knew it all along." That's surprisingly honest. "I'm trying. It's harder than it sounds." Denise was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a worn photograph. "This is my daughter Maya. She's 16 now, wants to be a doctor." Victoria looked at the photo. A beautiful girl with her mother's eyes and a smile that hadn't yet been crushed by the world. "When she was 8, she asked me why we had to go to the scary place to get money. That's what she called the check cashing store. The scary place. She didn't understand why we couldn't just use a bank like her friends' families did." Denise tucked the photo back into her purse. "I couldn't explain it to her. Couldn't explain that her mother had made a mistake 8 years before she was born, and the world had decided that mistake would define us both forever. Couldn't explain that there were people like you who looked at us and saw danger instead of desperation." "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered. "I know that word doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. You want to know why I'm here? Why I'm working with the woman who burned a millionaire's check instead of screaming at you like half the internet wants to?" Victoria nodded. "Because Maya is watching. She saw the video. She knows who you are. And she asked me, 'Mama, if that lady can change, does that mean the world can change too?'" The words hit Victoria like a wave. "I didn't have an answer for her," Denise continued. "I still don't. But I'm here to find out. Not for you. Not even for Marcus and his millions. I'm here because my daughter is watching, and I want to show her that the answer is yes. That people can change. That systems can change. That the world her children grow up in doesn't have to be as cruel as the world she was born into." Victoria felt tears streaming down her face and didn't bother to wipe them away. "I'll try," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll try every day to be worth the chance you're giving me." That's all any of us can do. Denise turned to walk toward her car, then paused. "Victoria." "Yes." "Next Saturday, I want you to meet Maya. She has questions about banking and finance. She says she wants to understand how money works, so she can fix what's broken." "I'd be honored." Denise nodded once and walked away into the evening, leaving Victoria standing alone, with the weight of a responsibility she was only beginning to understand. This wasn't about redemption anymore. It wasn't about salvaging her career, or her reputation, or her sense of self. This was about a 16-year-old girl who wanted to fix what was broken. And Victoria finally understood that she wasn't the hero of this story. She wasn't even an important character. She was just a small piece of a much larger puzzle. A puzzle that included Denise and Maya, and Marcus and Mrs. Johnson, and all the families who walked through the doors of the community center seeking help. The question wasn't whether Victoria Hartwell could change. The question was whether she could help change something bigger than herself. And for the first time since she'd burned that check, Victoria felt something other than shame. She felt purpose. 6 months to the day. After Victoria Hartwell burned Marcus Thompson's check, she stood in the lobby of First Metropolitan Bank's downtown Atlanta branch. The same lobby, the same marble floors, the same spot where ashes had scattered like dark confetti at her feet. But everything else had changed. Where the ashes had fallen, a glass display case now stood. Inside, carefully preserved under museum lighting, were the charred remains of the $1.8 million check. A brass plaque accompanied the exhibit, its words visible to every customer who walked through the doors. The Cost of Assumptions. In Memory of Prejudice. Destroyed by Dignity. December 14, 2024. Victoria touched the glass lightly as she did every morning before her shift. A reminder, a penance, a promise. Still doing that, I see. She turned to find Marcus Thompson walking toward her, Lily's hand clasped in his. The little girl had grown in 6 months taller, more confident with braids that bounced as she moved, but her eyes still carried a wariness when she looked at Victoria. A hesitation that broke Victoria's heart every time she saw it. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Good morning, Lily." "Morning, Ms. Victoria." Lily's voice was polite but distant. Therapy had helped her process what happened, but some wounds took longer to heal than others. Marcus nodded toward the display case. "Mrs. Johnson called me this morning. She said you've been at the community center every Saturday for 26 weeks straight. Never missed one." "No, sir. I haven't." "She also said you've been coming on Wednesdays now too, after your shifts here, teaching financial literacy classes." Victoria shrugged slightly. The Saturday sessions weren't enough. There are so many families who need help. And Maya Denise's daughter, she's been assisting me. She has a gift for explaining complex financial concepts in ways that make sense to people. Marcus studied her for a long moment. 6 months of watching this woman transform had taught him something about the difference between performance and genuine change. In the early weeks, Victoria's humility had felt forced, rehearsed, like someone reading lines from a script she didn't believe. But somewhere along the way, maybe around week 8 or 9, something had shifted. The performance had become real. "Walk with me," he said. Victoria followed him through the bank, past the teller windows, where she now worked, past the offices, where she used to command respect, past the conference room, where she'd once made decisions about who deserved service and who didn't. They stopped at his old corner office, the one that had been used by the branch manager before the incident, the one that had been Victoria's for 6 years. "Do you know why I asked you to meet me here today?" Marcus asked. "I assumed it was for my 6-month review." "It is, but not the kind you're expecting." He opened the office door. "Go inside." Victoria stepped into the room and froze. The office had been transformed. The walls were covered with photographs, families she'd helped at the community center, businesses that had received second-chance loans, children at financial literacy workshops learning to manage money. In the center of the main wall hung a large framed photo of Denise Carter and her daughter Maya standing in front of their newly purchased home. "I don't understand," Victoria whispered. "These are the people you've helped over the past 6 months, directly or indirectly." Mrs. Johnson compiled the photos. She wanted you to see the impact of your work. Victoria moved slowly around the room, her eyes filling with tears as she recognized face after face. The Rodriguez family, whose restaurant had expanded into the space next door, and now employed 12 people. The Williams sisters' elderly twins, who had been denied bank accounts for decades until Victoria personally shepherded their applications through the system. The teenage entrepreneurs from the youth program who had started a lawn care business with a microloan Victoria had helped them secure. "This isn't my impact," she said, her voice breaking. "This is Mrs. Johnson's work, Denise's work, your work. They don't see it that way." Marcus handed her a folder. "Read it." Victoria opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were letters, dozens of them from the people in the photographs. The first was from Denise Carter. "Dear Victoria, when I first met you, I saw the woman who burned a millionaire's check and got famous for being racist. I hated you. I wanted you to suffer the way people like me have suffered our whole lives. But over these months, I've watched you do something I didn't think was possible. I've watched you actually change, not perform change, not pretend to change for the cameras, really change. You've shown up every single week. You've listened to stories that must have been painful to hear. You've worked harder than anyone at the center, including the volunteers who've been there for years. You've never once complained about your demotion or your lost salary or the death threats you still receive. Last week when Maya told me she wants to be a banker someday, I almost fell out of my chair. A year ago she wanted nothing to do with banks, she saw them as the enemy. Now she sees them as tools that can help people because you showed her that banks can be different, that bankers can be different. I'm not saying I forgive you for what you did. Forgiveness isn't mine to give, that's between you and Mr. Thompson and his daughter. But I am saying that I believe you now. I believe you've changed, and I'm proud to call you my colleague and my friend. Denise." Victoria couldn't read anymore. The tears were flowing too freely, blurring the words on the page. "There are 47 letters in that folder," Marcus said. "Every single person you've helped wanted to tell you what you meant to them. I don't deserve this. Maybe not. But you've earned it." Marcus moved to stand beside her. "Victoria, when I gave you a choice 6 months ago, I honestly didn't know if you would make it. I thought there was maybe a 30% chance you would show up, do the minimum required, and eventually fade back into the kind of person you were before. I thought there was a 70% chance you would quit within the first month, claim victim status, and spend the rest of your life blaming me for ruining you." Victoria wiped her eyes. "I thought about it. The victim part. In those first weeks when the death threats were at their worst, and my husband couldn't look at me, and my kids were being bullied at school, I thought about giving up. I thought about making myself the martyr. What stopped you?" "Lily." Marcus went very still. "Every night when I couldn't sleep, I would see her face. The way she looked at me when I burned your check. The fear in her eyes. The confusion. She didn't understand why a stranger was hurting her daddy, and she didn't understand why everyone around her was cheering." Victoria's voice steadied. "I realized that I could either spend the rest of my life running from that memory, or I could spend the rest of my life trying to become someone that little girl wouldn't be afraid of. Someone who, if she ever saw me again, she might believe had actually changed." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to the door and called out, "Lily, can you come here, please?" The little girl appeared in the doorway, her eyes immediately finding Victoria, and then looking away. "Do you remember what we talked about in the car?" Marcus asked his daughter. Lily nodded slowly. "Do you want to say it, or do you want Daddy to say it?" "I want to say it." Lily took a deep breath, the kind of breath children take when they're about to do something brave. She walked toward Victoria, stopping a few feet away, her small hands clasped together. "Ms. Victoria, I've been scared of you for a long time. Dr. Sarah, she's my therapist. She helped me understand that what you did was wrong and it wasn't my fault, and it's okay to be scared of people who hurt us." Victoria nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "But Dr. Sarah also said that sometimes people do bad things because they're confused or scared, or they learned wrong things when they were growing up. She said, "That doesn't make the bad things okay, but it means that people can learn to do better." Lily's voice trembled, but she kept going. "I watched the videos of you at the community center. Daddy showed me. I saw you helping families and teaching kids about money and working really hard even though people are mean to you on the internet." She looked up at Victoria with those clear, honest eyes that children have before the world teaches them to hide their feelings. "I don't want to be scared of you anymore. It makes my tummy hurt, and it gives me bad dreams. So I decided that I'm going to try to stop being scared. But I need you to promise me something first." "Anything," Victoria whispered. "I'll promise you anything. Promise me you'll never burn anyone's paper again. Promise me you'll never be mean to someone just because of how they look. Promise me that if you see someone doing what you did, you'll stop them." Victoria knelt down so she was at Lily's eye level. "I promise," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise all of those things. And I promise that if I ever break those promises, I will come find you and tell you myself so you can hold me accountable." Lily considered this for a moment. Then she did something that made Victoria's heart crack open. She extended her small hand. "Okay, I accept your promise. Let's shake on it." Victoria took the child's hand and shook it solemnly like a business deal between equals. "Thank you, Lily. I won't let you down." "I hope not, because I'll be watching." Lily said it with such gravity that Victoria almost laughed through her tears. Then the little girl turned to her father. "Daddy, I did it. Can I go get a cookie from the break room now?" "You did great, baby girl. Yes, you can get a cookie. Just one." Lily bounced out of the room, the weight of the moment already lifting from her young shoulders. Children were resilient that way, able to process difficult emotions and then move on, leaving the adults to marvel at their strength. Marcus watched his daughter go, then turned back to Victoria. "She's been practicing that speech for a week. Dr. Sarah helped her write it. She was terrified. She was incredibly brave. She gets that from her mother." Marcus's voice carried a note of old grief. "Her mother died when Lily was 3, car accident. I've been raising her alone ever since." Victoria hadn't known. 6 months of working with this man, and she'd never known he was a widower, a single father, a man carrying grief alongside all his other burdens. "I'm sorry. I had no idea." "Why would you never asked. None of the people who judged me that day asked anything about my life. They just saw what they wanted to see and made their assumptions." Victoria absorbed the weight of those words. "When you burned my check," Marcus continued, "you weren't just humiliating me. You were humiliating a single father who had just picked up his sick daughter from daycare, who was running late for a board meeting, who was trying to squeeze in a bank errand between caregiving and crisis management. You were humiliating a man who lost his wife 2 years after building his company, who raised his daughter alone while running a billion-dollar enterprise, who wore old clothes that day because he'd changed in his office to go get Lily and didn't want to get his suit dirty. I didn't see any of that. I just saw. I know what you saw. You've told me. You saw a black man in a hoodie who couldn't possibly be legitimate." Victoria nodded, the shame still fresh even after 6 months. "But here's what I want you to understand." Marcus's voice softened. "The reason I gave you a second chance wasn't because I'm a saint. It wasn't because I'm some enlightened being who's above anger and hurt and wanting revenge. I gave you a second chance because of Lily. Because she was watching. Because I want her to grow up in a world where people can change. Where one mistake, even a terrible mistake, doesn't define your entire existence. Where redemption is possible for people who genuinely seek it." Marcus looked at the photos on the wall. "If I had destroyed you that day, fired you, pressed charges, made sure you never worked again, what would Lily have learned? That vengeance is justice. That people who do wrong should be thrown away and forgotten. She would have learned that there are consequences for racism. Yes, but she also would have learned that those consequences are final. That there's no coming back. That once you cross a line, you're condemned forever." Marcus shook his head. I didn't want her to learn that. I wanted her to learn that accountability and grace can coexist, that we can hold people responsible for their actions while still leaving room for them to become better. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd heard. "Did it work?" she finally asked. "Did she learn what you wanted her to learn?" You just shook her hand. You tell me. Victoria thought about that small hand in hers. That solemn promise between a grown woman and an 8-year-old girl. That moment of connection that had seemed impossible 6 months ago. I think maybe she did. So did I. Marcus picked up the folder of letters and handed it to her. Which brings me to the actual purpose of this meeting. Victoria, your 6-month probationary period is over. You've completed your community service hours, exceeded them actually by about 200%. You've paid off your restitution to the bank. You've attended every training session, passed every evaluation, and received glowing reviews from Mrs. Johnson and the community center staff. Victoria braced herself. This was the moment when he would tell her what came next. More punishment, more penance. An extension of her sentence. I'm offering you a promotion. She stared at him. What? Not to branch manager. Not yet. Maybe not ever, that depends on you. But I'm offering you the position of Director of Community Banking Initiatives. It's a new role we're creating based on the work you and Denise and Mrs. Johnson have been doing. You would oversee the Second Chance Banking Program, expand our financial literacy outreach, and build partnerships with community organizations across the region. I don't understand. Why would you give me more responsibility after what I did? Because you've proven you can handle it. Because the work you've been doing matters. And because redemption isn't just about punishment, it's about transformation. You've transformed Victoria. Now I'm giving you the opportunity to help transform the system that made you who you were. Victoria sat down heavily in a chair, overwhelmed. The salary would be higher than your current position, Marcus continued, but significantly less than your old branch manager pay. The title is impressive, but the work is hard. You'd be traveling to underserved communities, sitting in church basements and community centers, listening to stories that will break your heart over and over again. It's not glamorous. It won't make you famous or rich or powerful in any traditional sense. I don't want any of those things anymore. I know. That's why I'm offering you this job. Victoria looked around the office at the photographs of people she'd helped. The Rodriguez family, the Williams sisters, Denise Carter and her daughter Maya. Dozens of faces representing hundreds of hours of work, thousands of small decisions to show up and try and do better. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. When you first gave me the choice, resign or stay, did you think I would actually change? Or did you expect me to fail? Marcus considered the question carefully. I hoped you would change. I believed it was possible. But honestly, I gave you about a 30% chance of making it. The pattern with most people is that they apologize, they cry, they promise to do better, and then they slowly drift back to whoever they were before. The cameras go away, the pressure fades, and the old habits return. What made me different? You didn't just meet the requirements, you exceeded them. You didn't just show up on Saturdays, you came on Wednesdays too. You didn't just complete your community service hours, you kept coming back after they were done. You didn't just tolerate working with Denise, you became genuine friends with her. Marcus leaned against the desk. Most importantly, you never once complained, never once said, I've done enough, or when will this be over? You approached your redemption like it was a lifetime commitment, not a temporary inconvenience. Victoria nodded slowly. Because that's what it is. A lifetime commitment. I'm never going to stop doing this work. Even if you hadn't offered me this job, I would have kept volunteering at the community center, kept teaching financial literacy, kept trying to undo the damage that people like me have caused. I know. That's the other reason I'm offering you this job. Marcus smiled slightly. Might as well pay you for work you're going to do anyway. For the first time in 6 months, Victoria laughed. A real laugh, not the hollow sounds she'd been making when social situations required it. "Okay," she said. "I accept." "Good. You start Monday. Now go tell Lily you're not scary anymore, and see if she'll give you one of her cookies. She won't? She's very possessive of baked goods, but the asking will mean something to her." Victoria stood up and walked toward the door. Then she stopped and turned back. "Mr. Thompson?" "Yes." "Thank you, not just for the job, for everything. For giving me a chance when you had every reason not to. For believing that people can change even when all the evidence says otherwise. For showing your daughter that grace is possible." Marcus nodded once. "Don't thank me. Prove me right." Victoria walked out of the office, leaving Marcus alone with the photographs on the wall. He stood there for a long moment, looking at the faces of people whose lives had been touched by this strange chain of events. A burned check. A viral video. A choice made in the heat of a moment that could have gone so many different ways. His phone buzzed. A text from Margaret, his executive assistant. "Congressional testimony prep call in 10 minutes. Also, the documentary crew wants to schedule their final interview. Also, Lily's school called. She bit another kid who said her daddy was the check guy. We should probably talk about that." Marcus laughed softly. Some things never changed. His daughter was still fierce, still protective, still learning how to channel her emotions in constructive ways, just like Victoria. Just like all of them. He looked one last time at the display case in the lobby, visible through the office window. The charred remains of his check preserved under glass, teaching everyone who saw it about the cost of assumptions. 1 year later, a different scene. The Southside Financial Literacy Center had expanded. What was once a modest building, with worn furniture and flickering fluorescent lights, was now a thriving campus funded by the Thompson Foundation and staffed by an army of volunteers. Many of them former clients who had received help and now wanted to pay it forward. Victoria Hartwell stood at a podium in the center's new auditorium, addressing a crowd of community members, business leaders, and media representatives. Behind her, a screen displayed the statistics of the past year. 3,000 families served by the Second Chance Banking Program. 87% success rate in maintaining accounts after 1 year. $42 million in microloans distributed to minority-owned businesses. 116% increase in homeownership among program participants. "These numbers are impressive," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the crowded room. "But they don't tell the whole story. Numbers don't capture the mother who cried when she opened her first bank account in 15 years. Numbers don't capture the teenager who learned to manage money and is now paying his own way through college. Numbers don't capture the elderly couple who finally bought their first home after decades of being told they weren't worthy." She paused, looking out at the faces in the audience. 1 year ago, I stood in a bank lobby and burned a man's check because I assumed he was a criminal. I made that assumption based on the color of his skin, the clothes he wore, the way he looked. I was wrong. I was more than wrong. I was cruel and racist and everything I claimed not to be. The room was completely silent. The man whose check I burned gave me a choice. He could have destroyed me. He had every right. Instead, he offered me the chance to become someone different, someone better. I took that chance, and I have spent every day since then trying to be worthy of it. Victoria's eyes found Marcus in the crowd. Lily sat beside him now, 9 years old, watching the woman who had once terrified her with careful, evaluative eyes. "I'm not here to tell you that I'm redeemed. Redemption isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. I'm not here to tell you that I've made up for what I did. Some harm can never be fully repaired. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness from those I hurt. That's not my place." She stepped out from behind the podium, moving closer to the audience. "I'm here to tell you that change is possible. Real change. Not the performance of change for cameras and social media, but the hard, grinding, daily work of becoming a different person. I'm here to tell you that systems can change too, that banks don't have to exclude people, that financial institutions don't have to be instruments of oppression, that the way things have always been is not the way they have to stay. Victoria looked at Denise Carter, sitting in the front row beside her daughter Maya. Maya was 17 now, a junior in high school, already accepted to an early admission program at Howard University, where she planned to study finance. I'm here because of the people in this room. Because Denise Carter showed me what strength looks like. Because Maya Carter showed me what hope looks like. Because Mrs. Dorothy Johnson showed me what commitment looks like. Because Marcus Thompson showed me what grace looks like. She returned to the podium for her final words. A year ago, I burned a check and thought I was protecting my bank. I was really just protecting my prejudices. Today, I help people open accounts and build wealth and achieve dreams, and I know that this is what protection actually looks like. Not keeping people out, but bringing them in. Not destroying what we don't understand, but learning to understand what we've been taught to fear. Victoria's voice strengthened for her conclusion. The ashes of that check are still on display at First Metropolitan Bank. They'll stay there forever as far as I'm concerned. Not as a monument to my shame, but as a reminder of what assumptions cost and what becomes possible when we choose differently. She looked directly at Lily. A very wise 9-year-old once made me promise that I would never burn anyone's paper again, that I would never be mean to someone just because of how they looked, that I would stop others from doing what I had done. Lily's face broke into a small, proud smile. I've kept those promises. I will keep them for the rest of my life, and I hope that everyone in this room will make the same promises and keep them too. Victoria stepped back from the podium as applause filled the auditorium. Later, after the speeches and the photographs and the endless handshakes, Victoria found herself standing alone outside the center. The evening air was warm, the Atlanta skyline glittering in the distance, the sounds of celebration drifting from inside. Not bad for a recovering racist. She turned to find Denise Carter walking toward her, 2 cups of punch in her hands. I don't think I'll ever recover, Victoria said, accepting one of the cups. I think I'll just keep working on it until I die. That's probably healthy. Denise stood beside her, both women looking out at the city. You know, a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be friends with you, I would have laughed in their face. And then probably spit on it. I would have deserved the spit. Yeah, you would have. Denise took a sip of her punch. But here we are. You helped my daughter get into college. You helped me buy my first home. You helped hundreds of families who would have been turned away from every bank in the city. You did most of that work yourself. I just opened doors. Doors that were locked to us before. Denise turned to face Victoria. I want to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. Okay. I forgive you. Victoria went very still. Not for what you did to Marcus, that's between you and him, but for what you represented. For all the times people like you looked at people like me and decided we weren't worth helping. For all the doors that were locked, all the assumptions that were made, all the quiet cruelties that added up to a lifetime of being treated as less than. Denise's voice was steady, strong, certain. I forgive you because holding on to that anger was poisoning me. I forgive you because you've proven that people can change and that proof matters to my daughter. I forgive you because forgiveness is what I needed to do to move forward with my own life. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve that. Probably not. But that's the thing about grace, isn't it? It's never about what we deserve. The 2 women stood in silence for a long moment. Then Denise raised her cup of punch. To burn checks and second chances. Victoria raised hers in response. To the people brave enough to offer them and the people strong enough to take them. They drank together as the stars came out over Atlanta. Inside the community center, Marcus Thompson watched through the window as 2 women who should have been enemies shared a moment of connection. His daughter tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, are Ms. Victoria and Ms. Denise friends now? It looks that way, baby girl. That's good. Dr. Sarah says friends help us be better people. Dr. Sarah is very smart. Lily was quiet for a moment, her face scrunched in thought. Daddy. Yes. Remember when you told me that the world could change if we were brave enough to change it? I remember. I think you were right. Lily smiled up at him with the simple confidence of a child who has witnessed something extraordinary and understood its meaning. We changed it. Not all of it, but some of it. And some is a good place to start. Marcus knelt down and pulled his daughter into a hug. You're the wisest person I know, Lily Thompson. I know, Daddy. Can I have another cookie now? He laughed, the sound mixing with the celebration around them, filling the room with warmth and joy, and the unmistakable feeling of hope. Outside, Victoria and Denise walked back toward the building together. Inside, Marcus held his daughter close, and in the lobby of First Metropolitan Bank, under soft museum lighting, the ashes of a burned check continued their silent testimony, a reminder that the cost of assumptions is high, but the value of redemption is higher. That prejudice can be destroyed in seconds, but trust must be rebuilt over years. That one moment of cruelty can define a life, but so can 1,000 moments of grace. They burned his check, but they could not burn his dignity. They destroyed his paper, but they could not destroy his worth. And in choosing mercy over vengeance, education over punishment, transformation over destruction, Marcus Thompson proved something that the world desperately needed to see. That the strongest power is not the power to destroy, it is the power to rebuild.